All right, well, it is 2:02 here on the East Coast, and it is going to be a very jam-packed 90 minutes ahead of us. So I think I will go ahead and kick off this session. We have a nice crowd gathering, and I'm sure folks will keep streaming in. So with that, I will remind all to please mute if you're not speaking and begin. Hello and welcome to the 2021 Earth Science Information Partners Esip Winter Highlights webinar, Winter Meeting Highlights webinar. My name is Megan Carter. I'm the Community Director of Esip. And this webinar is intended to highlight key events of this meeting from many different perspectives. You'll hear from Esip leaders, session organizers, community fellows, as well as from the staff. And whether you weren't able to attend the meeting or you're looking to find out what was happening in a concurrent breakout session, this webinar is definitely for you. We invite you to get involved in one or more of the efforts that you will see highlighted here, and we hope that by what you see today, you'll be inspired to do so. This webinar is being recorded and it will be posted to our YouTube channel for later viewing. If you have questions or comments at any time, we've provided a collaborative document that's going to be shared in the chat box, and this is the place where you can type in your questions or comments for any presenter, and presenters will be monitoring this and respond during or shortly after the webinar, so don't be shy. Presenters, please have this document open as well. So Esip hosts 2 annual Esip meetings like the one you'll hear about today in order to connect and create collaborative opportunities for individuals and organizations who are working across sectors and across the data lifecycle. These meetings are one of the ways that we help Earth Science data professionals to find each other, to work together, and to leverage each other's collective expertise to make progress on common data challenges and opportunities, and ultimately to make Earth Science data more discoverable, accessible, and useful to researchers, practitioners, policymakers, and the public. This year's meeting was held January 26th to the 29th online, and the theme was Leading Innovation in Earth Science Data Frontiers. For this virtual meeting, we leveraged many of the same tools we've used in the past, including Kickoff, Zoom, Sketch, the Esip Figshare repository, Google Suite, particularly for collaborative notes documents, and Slido. Esip staff dove in to identify a couple of critical additions that enabled us to best take advantage of our time together virtually, including the use of Wonder for our coffee breaks and other networking sessions. In addition, breakout session organizers took part in session facilitation training to support them in planning the best virtual sessions possible. And this training and effort was really evident in the sessions themselves. We have asked presenters to contribute their presentations to the Esip Figshare portal. You can use this URL on the bottom right to access the winter meeting content that's been contributed thus far. There, you'll also find more than 20 posters that were contributed to the winter meeting research showcase that you'll not hear much about today. You can also find and access content at the meeting Sketch site with this URL on the bottom left. You can simply find the session that you're interested in, click on it, and then you can view the session description, notes and presentations, and a link to the recording. Of course, we'll keep linking content as it becomes available to us, and it's not too late to deposit your presentations in Figshare. We highly encourage you to do so. As I mentioned, all plenary and breakout session recordings can be found on our YouTube channel in the 2021 Esip Winter Meeting playlist, and they are linked to the session descriptions as I just mentioned. So to give you just a few numbers, I'm a numbers person, about the meeting. We had 367 total attendees. It was one of our largest winter meetings to date, including 124 first-timers. The meeting featured 4 plenary sessions, 29 community-led breakout sessions, and these sessions featured over 110 speakers. So truly, this was a community event. And here's just a virtual photo of our participants, thanks to their Kickoff profile pictures. All right, so now we're going to pivot to hear some highlights from our 2021 Esip leaders. We'll start with Ken Casey, Esip's president.
All right, thanks. Can you hear me, Megan?
Yes.
Okay, great, fantastic. Yeah, so I'm really excited to have the opportunity to highlight the 3 plenaries And really, I think just to take a step back, I really wanted to stress what a wonderful meeting this winter meeting was. It rejuvenated virtual forums for me. I don't know about the rest of you out there, but this was the first virtual meeting I've attended in a long, long time that actually really got me excited. And kudos to the whole Esip staff, and then of course all the attendees and participants for really making it awesome. And it kicked off with this opening plenary on creating a culture of innovation and working at the frontiers, with the three speakers, Susan Shingledecker, of course, our new executive director, and Caitlin Conscious and Twyla Moon. And just to share a few of the takeaways, Susan did a fantastic job of really leading the way with her fearless example, stepping up to lead this amazing organization and, putting herself out there. And so hats off to you, Susan, if you're on the call today. It was just a great way to kick off the meeting. Caitlin Conscious followed up with a really great set of stories on her work. A lot of it focused in Vietnam about how really failing can actually lead you toward inspired innovation. And she really shared some wonderful stories about failing forward in Vietnam and the lessons that she took away from that about really learning to surround herself with yay-sayers, not naysayers. And what a great phrase to carry with you through life. So, Twyla Moon closed off that opening plenary. And as an oceanographer myself, when she first showed this picture of a little inflatable boat that they were going to put out on this ephemeral lake sitting on top of the ice, I immediately thought to myself, you're going to need a bigger boat. What are you guys doing? That's crazy. What if that water drains away from underneath you all of a sudden? You're in big trouble. But she shared her wonderful stories of working in these ephemeral lakes, and that just really set a wonderful tone about working at the edge, taking risks. Let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. In the next innovation, we really saw three great examples of using artificial intelligence and marine learning at the frontiers of earth science data. Our first speaker was Lexi Yang, and she really laid out this 100 trillion pixel challenge. If you image the planet at a 5-meter resolution every day, you've got to deal with 100 trillion pixels of information. And shared her stories about a program called GeoAI, working in the disaster response area. And she really focused a lot on some of the forward-looking issues, like getting good physical spatial consistency so that we can achieve explainable AI or XAI in these AI applications. The next speaker, Lyndon Estes, highlighted a lot of what we do, the critical nature of Oh, goodness. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Ken.
Okay, I just got a weird message about the organizer asking me to unmute, but as far as I was aware, I was unmuted. Could you hear the last?
Yes, we heard you until just a moment ago. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay, that's weird. I don't know what happened. Okay, well, I'm still here. Lyndon Estes, highlighting the critical nature of the good data, how hard it is to do good labels, and he was using an example around small-scale cropland management. Hannah Kerner closed out that session on global food security and highlighted a lot of key challenges. I didn't try to list them on the screen there. They are in the notes, but they really span everything from the sparsity of good labels and ground truth data, all the way to how challenging it is to deploy an ML model. And she highlighted a figure from deeplearning.ai that only 22% of companies using ML have successfully deployed a model. And so I think that really, puts the challenge squarely in front of us. And let's go ahead and jump to the third and final slide for me. And this was really a great opportunity to look at innovations in open search and discovery from folks at Google, Dan Brickley and Natasha Noy. Dan really walked us through where things are with schema.org and how it's having a big impact on everyday lives of web users. And we're really just at the beginning of using it for structured data on the web. Natasha laid out some really interesting figures based on a quick study that they did reviewing the journal Nature Materials in 2019, and how, even recently, still 93% of data are only available upon request and only 7% are shared publicly. And then she walked us through these 3 key steps of publishing the data, but not just that, you got to make the data discoverable through things like schema.org, and then get your tools together, things like the Google Data Search tool, which currently has 28 million data sets in it, 10% of which have DOIs. So that was a little bit of a higher number than I think I expected. 34% of those have a license and 84% are free or open. So definitely, I think, reflecting some progress there, but still a long way to go to truly getting to this open ecosystem of data out on the web. And that wraps it up for my slides.
Thank you very much, Ken. So we'll now pass it off to Denise Hills, Esip's Vice President.
Hi, I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about Esip's new community participation guidelines. First off, I want to say I'm honored to be serving as Esip's Vice President, and very excited to be working with such a great leader as Ken. And I'm looking forward to the next year. But I also did want to start I want to acknowledge that I'm presenting today from the original homelands of the Muskogee or Creek Nation. Many Muskogee were removed forcibly by the US government as a part of the Trail of Tears. Only about half of those who were removed survived to reach the Indian Territory. Those who remained have become a distinct tribe unto themselves, the Porch Creek Indians, the only federally recognized tribe in the state of Alabama. I make this acknowledgement today to honor those who lived here before and to recognize the role of my ancestors in the genocide of those people. As part of my efforts to be more inclusive and welcoming, I must acknowledge the injustices of the past so that I may assist in restoring justice moving forward. And so one of the reasons that I do this land acknowledgement now is we want to be, Esip is a very welcoming community. And the Esip community participation guidelines were drafted initially to help incorporate principles of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion to make Esip that welcoming space, that place where we can all get together on equal ground. And so one of the things that the heart of Esip really is the people who are involved. And we try to put the people first and do our best to recognize and appreciate the diversity of contributors from all over the world, from all different backgrounds, include different educational backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds. And the community participation guidelines outline kind of the acceptable or expected behaviors for participants in any sort of Esip projects, events, or spaces. Next slide, please. So the Megan started the work on the community participation guidelines, and then the governance committee refined it to work for Esip. Governance committee is continuing to work on this, and one of the things that we decided to do is in order to make the community participation guidelines so people understood or had an opportunity to ask questions, to learn more about it, we hosted a session at the winter meeting and to introduce it, to allow space for questions about it, and to get feedback on it. So Bill Tang, as chair of the governance committee, is taking over this work, and the committee is going to continue to refine the process for what happens after a report is made, and we'll revise the community participation guidelines as any gaps are discovered. During the session, we talked about what it was and some important things that people really kind of latched onto. We have a third-party reporting service that allows for anonymous or semi-anonymous reporting to ensure privacy and protect against retaliation. We also are working to ensure transparency of process that will build trust that Esip truly doesn't doesn't talk the talk, we also walk the walk. We truly do want these to be used and enforced, always learning and adapting, and comments are always welcome. Next slide, please. One of the other really big takeaway, kind of what's next, is we really want to help people better understand what is and is not included, encouraging people to report even seemingly minor violations, because that can help us track, see bigger picture issues, that there might be a larger thing that we need to address. Related to that, though, any unintentional violations should be addressed from a place of compassion and a place where we can educate and learn. They still need to be addressed. And the other really big thing is that we're going to be looking at opportunities to provide additional training, not just on the CPG, but on other things such as that. And with that, I think I'm over time, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Denise. So next up, we have the breakout session highlights. These will be a series of very quick 2-minute lightning talks. Strict time will be kept to keep us moving. So speakers, if you hear a timer going off, that means your time is up for that report out, and you should wrap it up. If one speaker is highlighting more than one session, we'll have 2 minutes per session. I've asked each presenter to provide information on how to learn more and how to get involved. If you have questions, again, there is that collaborative Google document. Maybe Annie can share it one more time. It's a great way to leave questions or leave comments for any and all of the presenters. And actually, I challenge you all to try to leave at least a few in that document, so that even if we don't get to speak about them live, these conversations can continue past this 90-minute session. So we'll now move to the first breakout session highlighter, which will be Scotty Strachan, and he's going to tell us about designing hands-on sensor training in the post-COVID-19 world.
Okay, thanks, Megan. Yeah, we had a really good time at Esip Winter presenting this to our community and then getting a lot of interaction around it. So what we did is a working session in the Enviro Sensing group. This cluster's been around for a while. We've developed best practices in situ environmental sensing, both hardware as well as software and data. We asked our community to come to the table with their needs for hands-on technology and cross-training, including design and deployment best practices. They responded with a consensus that video micro-tutorials are something that we could pursue. And so what we'd like to do is come up with templates and branding guidelines for how we could streamline this process and incentivize early careers and folks in the field who are actually using these things to produce such micro tutorials. And so we're going to make this a cluster focus in the next year or two. The chairs, myself, Renee Brown, and Joseph Bell, are going to facilitate this development, and we're recruiting community volunteers who want to take on pieces of this template and branding development, as well as some of the first pilots. So, wow, we've got a few people lined up in the cluster already who are going to play this game. The more, the merrier. And so, just like Esip has always really been very welcoming and inclusive, we continue to push that in our cluster and say, come on in if this is of interest, and see what we can do. All right, Megan, back to you.
Thank you very much, Scotty. That was a very efficient use of your time. Moving on, we're going to be hearing from Val Stanley, who's going to be telling us about the kickoff meeting of the Physical Sample Curation Cluster.
Good morning and afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Val Stanley. So yeah, I'm here to go over the Physical Samples Cluster session from the winter meeting. And so we had met previously at the summer meeting to hone our cluster statement and kind of identify working group topics. So then having that all together, we're up and running with our Esip page. So what's the next step? What are we going to work on? So we got together for this session at the winter meeting and had Shelley Stahl come and give us a great talk about fair samples. And she brought up the idea of journal-specific guidance as an identified need of something that someone could pick up and work on. And that was really great and super helpful. And we actually accepted that as our first priority and task for the group, which is very exciting. The other interesting story is the working group areas. We noted that sample infrastructure and access is a topic that people are very excited about, and that emerged from discussions, and hats off to Alex Hangstifer for running that breakout session kind of on the fly for us. So moving forward, we would love to see you in the cluster, so please join our listserv. There's a link here for that. And we'll be reaching out shortly to identify times for us to meet up to continue the work.
Thank you very much, Val. And I should note that these slides are already available on the Esip Share repository. Annie, maybe you could pop the link in the chat. I believe it's also at the top of the collaborative notes document. So if there's anything you want to go back and revisit, they're there for you. All right. So moving on, we will be hearing from Robert McGuinn, who's going to be telling us about a session that highlighted innovative approaches to informatics challenges associated with biological data.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, thanks. Yeah, I'm Robert McGuinn. I'm with NOAA's National Center for Environmental Information, and I am co-chairing the Biological Data Standards Cluster. And we had a great presentation by 5 presenters, and really our session goals kind of mirror our cluster goals. So we want to explore innovative approaches to biological data informatics. We want to build linkages within the biological information standards community and foster knowledge sharing between biodiversity managers nationally and internationally. And then ultimately build a community of practice around biological data standards within the United States. These presentations were incredible, and it's only a smattering of all of the standards that are out there. But what we really thought emerged from these sessions was there's an emerging standardized portal and network frameworks for biological data mobilization that's happening. Marie-Elise Lecoq presented the Living Atlas community, and then Curtis Dyerson and Neil Cobb presented Symbiota 2 as 2 examples of that. We really saw within the presentations of Nicole Kearney and Nikki Nicholson, this idea of enhancing discoverability and interoperability of data. Also, the idea of knowledge graphs came up in Curtis Dyerson and Neil Cobb's talk about how we can really enhance the discoverability and interoperability. So I think that's another emerging theme. And then we saw a presentation by Megan Cromwell at NOAA in CEI about how to exploit images and video as a source for biological observations. And there's a lot of incredible efforts going on. Specifically, I just wanted to call out MBARI, our Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, and their FathomNet project, which Megan talked about as a sort of entry into that world. But yeah, great session. And if you want to contact us, please reach out to Abby Benson, our chair, and then my other co-chairs as Aaron Satterwhite. So, but yeah, love to hear you guys and talk with you on the Biodata Slack channel. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. So next we'll move on to Chris Linus, who's going to be telling us about the usage-based discovery session.
Thanks. So we've been working for the last year on this usage-based discovery paradigm. And the idea behind that paradigm is rather than do data discovery or searches based on data characteristics, you would do them based on your intended usage. And so basically you would look for other people that had used the data in the same way. And the session was focused on potential collaborations with other clusters because this problem, this issue, and I think we just saw it in the previous talk, surfaces again and again in many different disciplines. And so first takeaway was that associating data with the ways they're used does seem to resonate across multiple Esip clusters. And I'm just sorry we didn't have the biological data cluster there as well. We should look more closely at some links between data and publications. We've been working with applications and data, but I think the publications can provide a key missing link. And we should also be looking to enable the graph of interpersonal collaborations to materialize, looking for supernodes. And this is part of that Esip collaboration aspect that I talked about. It's, in a way, it's kind of putting people inside the graph, but not in a creepy Neuromancer Tron sort of way, in a slightly less creepy LinkedIn kind of way. And lastly, we were looking for some use case bundles. And this is groups of related use cases. Think of wildfires along with air quality, for instance, that might encompass many different related use cases, and so could involve more than one cluster working around a particular phenomenon. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Next, we're going to pass it off to Karen Moe, who's going to be telling us about California Burning, putting data to work, the disaster lifecycle cluster session.
Thank you, Megan. Yes, so we in the disasters lifecycle have been exploring this trusted data concept and how we share that view with applications, in particular, the whole realm of the disaster lifecycle. And so one of the first things we did was a Slido question, just asking people to identify some key features, which we've got a little snapshot here. And it does focus on documenting quality, validating data, trusted source. So these are the aspects that we feel we really need to communicate. We did hear from folks at NOAA and University of Wisconsin and NASA about various new products and technologies that they put to work during the extraordinary fire events. And our takeaways really looked at how we can improve our communications, both interagency, so that we can move from research to operations, but really operations to access. And we want to do what Dave is calling an ecosystem of innovation, working with other clusters to produce a whole feedback loop of how that data is being used, getting back to the data providers and providing some insights. So we've got our information. We meet first Thursdays. We'll be meeting March 4th. So I hope you can join us and help us figure this out.
Thank you, Karen. So I just wanted to quickly mention that there might have been an issue with the permissions on the collaborative Q&A document. That has been resolved. So if you have that open and you refresh it, you should be able to add your comments and questions, and sorry about that, but we look forward to your additions there. So moving on, we will now be speaking to Ted Haberman, who will tell us about the Innovating in a Documentation Ecosystem session.
Thanks, Megan. Audio okay?
Yes, great.
Great. Okay, so the organizers of this session are all in the process of evolving documentation repositories at the USGS and the DOE with the goal of integrating discovery and access systems across internal and external stakeholder groups. This is a challenge that many Esip members have faced over many years, and we wanted to leverage that experience to identify needs and approaches to more effectively link related metadata and data within and across agencies and organizations. This figure shows the ingredients and the goals of bringing them together. People and organizations and communities of funders, contributors, and users, documentation and data standards and conventions that support sharing across these communities while considering varying needs within the community, infrastructure and tools that support the entire data lifecycle, and identifiers for everything that support connections of many types across the community. The session included presentations by project leaders and tool developers, followed by breakouts for collecting experiences and suggestions. Takeaways, the biggest challenge identified was managing different funders with different schedules and priorities, convincing them to work together. Our approach is to look for effective patterns in current ecosystems as examples with the goal of finding, implementing, and developing tools that work for the whole system. The next step is continuing to develop and communicate the value proposition to funders, project managers, and stakeholders, increasing communication across and between groups, outreach to providers and users, and training in new tools and standards and conventions. That's it.
Thank you, Ted, for that great report out. Next up, we'll be moving on to Rupu Gupta, who will be telling us about seeking solutions, improving the application of earth science data for community resilience.
Hi everyone, I'm Rupu Gupta and I'm sharing highlights for the Community Resilience Cluster. Our cluster conducted a workshop session at the winter meeting that was titled Seeking Solutions, as you see in the title slide here. We shared details of a problem statement we are working on with the larger Esip community that outlines challenges in using earth science data to advance community resilience. And we asked attendees for their feedback and recommendations to fill in gaps to help us refine this problem statement. We had a really productive and energizing session and got extremely valuable feedback from the group. And we ended up with these 3 big takeaways. The first of which is that we need to continue to listen and engage in conversations across Esip and beyond to identify collaborative opportunities that impact community resilience. The second is we need to reinforce, in other words, assess how we can help bring community frameworks like the CARE principles into the mainstream, into earth science data and our community. And lastly, we need to apply, meaning this is where the cluster solidifies our goals and distills our problem statement into a more accessible, shareable, and actionable form. The tags we leave you with below encompass these themes, and they highlight the interest that the session attendees expressed in these collaborative opportunities, including around data accessibility. So if you want to learn more and be part of this conversation, you can contact Erika Virapongse directly. We also meet every 3rd Wednesday of the month. Our listserv and Slack info is below if you'd like to sign up. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rupu, and thank you to all of our presenters thus far for keeping to the time and giving us some great highlights. So I'm reminding myself to slow down a little bit so that you can move over to the collaborative document and maybe drop a question or a comment. And I will more slowly move us to our next presenter. I'd like to introduce Ryan Mcgranigan, who's going to be telling us about linking knowledge in the earth and space sciences, knowledge graphs, networks connecting data and individuals.
Hi, Megan. Thank you very much. And thanks for the organization of this highlights. It's nice reading back through the breakout sessions and seeing the trend that really motivated this session, which is that the growing scale and complexity of the scientific fields that span Esip are such that we can't exist in our silos anymore and really need to think about relational ways of connecting our data and our individuals. And that was the ethos of this session that we organized that was very cross-sector in its organization across industry, NASA, the public sector, and academia. And we really wanted this to be representative of the group that we were trying to create. So it was uncommonly cross-disciplinary. You can see the selection of the panel members that we convened at the meeting, and each of them had fantastic perspectives to share with us. A few of the areas that we really focused on were the socio-technical aspects of knowledge graphs and creating knowledge graphs, as well as the different domains. How do you integrate the domains using a knowledge graph? And then Juan Cicada shared some interesting thoughts about the industry perspective about building knowledge graphs. How do we learn from industry and being successful in this? A few of the interesting takeaways, we do have a rich documentation of the session online that I can point you to, but a few of the takeaways that I wanted to bring here were the statement that beautiful data or usable data are understandable data. And in order to achieve this understandable data, we talked about a new role, something that we were calling the knowledge scientist. And if you search that online, you can find some information about the knowledge scientist role. The second one was that knowledge graphs allow us to dissolve these boundaries, these kind of artificial boundaries that exist between metadata and data. And so in that case, relations really become a first-class citizen. And that's one of the things that's needed. And you're hearing the outcomes from the other breakout groups. And then finally, it was clear the value of knowledge graphs, but really we're now at a point where we're confronting how to actually achieve that. So we talked about some approaches to achieving knowledge graph creation. So I've listed a couple of the key questions that you can read through there. One of the things that really emerged from this was the need to connect the machine learning cluster and the semantic technology cluster to make progress on this. And so we're going to be starting a cross-cluster collaboration, and the first meeting will be next Friday. So feel free to join that Slack channel, hashtag semtech-ml, and we'll talk to you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So now we're going to pass the ball to Bill Tang, who is going to give us a double feature, starting with science and the US government. Where does your contribution fit into the picture? And Bill, just let me know when you want me to move to the next slide.
Can we reverse the two slides? Because that's how I...
Yes, why not?
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thanks, Megan. So the agriculture and climate cluster had two related sessions. I'm going to cover them together in the next 4 minutes. The first session was on carbon management in agriculture and the role of informatics in connecting the disparate concepts and entities. We had 3 guiding questions. 1, how do the UN Sustainable Development Goals relate to President Biden's climate plan? 2, what is the role of the farming sector and its crop management best practices? And 3, how can your work as a research scientist inform farm management? We had 3 invited speakers, roughly corresponding to these 3 questions and roughly addressing scales from the global to the regional to the local. Prior to the session, we had created an initial concept map based on 4 documents. The first one is the Biden climate plan from his campaign website. The second one is the Secretary of Energy Advisory Board Task Force report from the Obama administration. And the third one is the Climate 21 Transition Memo, specifically the one on USDA. And both the task force report and the transition memo were key inputs to the Biden climate plan. And the fourth document is the UN Sustainable Development Goal, specifically number 2 on zero hunger. This initial concept map is showing the figure on the right, the part without any color. I know you can't see the details, but you can see the colors. So as each speaker presented their materials, we added their concepts and relationship to this initial concept map. And those additions are shown in color. For details, please follow the link shown after the word takeaways. The 3 takeaways are: 1, carbon sequestration can be enhanced through climate smart land management practices. 2, climate-friendly farming can be achieved through science and socio-technical innovations. And 3, technology and informatics can help span the geographical scales and scientific disciplines. Though in this session, policy wasn't explicitly covered, policy is related to much of what was covered. So we had a second session, which was a tutorial on policy, addressing how science and technology get incorporated into the federal government, and how does one navigate through this complex landscape. The figure on the right shows the framework and components for the US science and technology policy. Again, for details, please follow the link shown after the word takeaways. The 3 main takeaways are: 1, you can incorporate your science and technology expertise into policy by working with your professional societies. An example is AGU's Policy Action Center. 2, Esip may wish to explore how to highlight and communicate its contributions to policy through its members. Although the session focused on federal policy, science and technology also has a role at other organizational levels. Currently, our cluster is finalizing its plans for 2021, especially leading up to the summer meeting in July. Naturally, the topics and related invited speakers over the next several months will be extensions and expansions of our winter sessions. Our next monthly meeting is Tuesday, March 2nd, 3 p.m. Eastern. If you want to be part of all the exciting action, please sign up to be on our mailing list. See the link under the word join. Any questions, please contact Brian or me at the email addresses shown. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. So now moving on, we will welcome Jensen Sun, who's going to tell us about best practices and fundamental challenges of AI in the Earth and Space Sciences.
Thank you, Megan. Hi, everyone. So our session is about the current best practice and the fundamental challenges of AI. So we have invited 6 speakers to talk about their actual, most of them already published a paper and have the application, the data set already online that we can see the results. So they are sharing their practical experiences of how AI is being used to solve their earth science problems. So we have a lot of discussions and that is very helpful for people, especially those beginners with AI and who want to get on board and to tackle their earth science problems using the machine learning techniques. So the first thing that we have achieved is a quick poll shows that the Esip community is mostly concerned about the explainable AI and how to prepare the earth science data into AI-ready format. That's the most concerned 2 questions right now, and I think we should spend more time on that on how to solving them. And the second takeaway is, although we have there are tremendous amount of use cases for AI in earth science, but the realistic expectations should be in place for what AI can achieve. So it's not AI is obviously not a silver bullet for everything. It has some limitations. So that kind of knowledge should be shared, and people should be educated with that knowledge before they actually use AI to do something. And another thing about what we can do is how to make the cyber infrastructure ready for machine learning practitioners. So because the big data is involved, the science data is very, very huge, and it's impossible to train it on some individual or community level facilities. So probably the cloud-based computing and the parallel computing techniques must be in place for it is the key to achieve AI models with a very good generalization and can be with higher possibility to be operational in future. And currently we have 2 Esip machine learning lab activities. One is the GitHub repository called Awesome Earth AI, and we are also drafting a review paper together with alongside ESDS WG. So both activities are welcome everyone to join us, and all this information can be found on the machine learning cluster webpage and the GitHub repository. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jensen. Now we'll pass it to Yuhan Rao, who will tell us about accelerating artificial intelligence applications at scale with AI-ready data.
Thanks, Megan. And in the winter meeting that we had a session focused on the AI-ready data and how we can define the AI readiness of our Earth and space science data to accelerate the AI applications in the field. And we have a really vibrant discussion, including people from with different roles in the data ecosystem, as we showed on the map on the right. And the key takeaway of this session is that there need coordinated effort to define AI readiness and related tools and service for assessing the AI readiness and ensuring that data provider can make their data AI ready. And it need to integrate understanding of data AI readiness from the whole data ecosystem. Sometimes the AI readiness thought by the data provider is not necessarily what the data user are expecting. And the last but not least is providing the training materials and guides for different roles in the data ecosystem. And in order to achieve such goals, we are planning to set up a cluster to coordinate the work. And right now we are still in some offline discussion with participated interested parties in this work. And we have also reached out to Denise, so because we are also aiming to form AI readiness standards for the data. So if you are interested in, you can send me an email before we set up the cluster. And also you can also sign up using this bit.ly link to get more updates from this activity. Thanks.
So much, Yuhan. So at this time, I want to take a 1-minute break. So you all can go over to the Q&A document, take a look at what's been added there and potentially add something yourself. And we'll be back, like I said, in 1 minute. And thank you, Annie, for pasting that link in the chat. All right, well, time does fly, doesn't it? That was 1 minute. So we will continue on with our meeting highlights. We will pass the ball now to Ed Armstrong to tell us about analysis-ready data in science and industry.
Okay, hello folks, it's Ed Armstrong here, speaking on behalf of the other organizers from the NASA as the standards office. So we had this session called ARD for Science and Industry. And we were about exploring the landscape, the current landscape of analysis-ready data from the perspective of the user community and also producers, and strategize on ways to harmonize ARD activities and the definition. And we did this through presentations and breakouts. There were 2 presentations from NASA and one from the International CIOS, kind of on the user needs as well as the current kind of state of the art of ARD for the earth science community. And at the beginning of this well-attended session, we held like a poll result, or we took a poll of the community of what ARD means to them as with regards to characteristics. Now there you see the little word cloud that's clean, standardized, and cloud optimized. So that was kind of a good starting point. And then we went into breakout after the presentations. We went into these breakout sessions where we addressed questions from both a user regarding what ARD means for a user, as well as a second question for the AR producers to describe a little bit about their experiences with producing ARDs and the workflows they had created, as well as thinking about how in the context of ARD, how could we involve Esip or vice versa? How can Esip get involved in ARD? So there were a couple takeaways. One of them, of course, with all this varying community, really the definition is really hard to narrow down because although it's about making data easier to use for both analysis and time series, from communities, disciplines, and applications, there's often different needs that arise, or different definitions that arise in these different communities or applications. So you think about the space versus the Earth, as well as the different processing, satellite processing levels in the the satellite arena, and then how does that couple with GIS and models? So that's still kind of an area that needs a better definition and more thought and analysis. And of course, tightly linked to that, these needs are the varying data formats and also the services and metadata that go into the ARD. So it was realized that metadata conventions are very important for things like the cloud optimized formats. And for the lower processing levels, of course, there's the services side, the workflows and the subsetting and the transformations of the input data that you need to get it to an ARD state. So those are the two primary takeaways. And then, how to best leverage the ESIP community. There's really a couple things that came up there. There's things that's going on in the cloud computing cluster with regard to ARCO. That's for the analysis ready cloud optimized. That's a new acronym that's kind of bubbled up recently. And perhaps in the future, a test bed approach, using the kind of OGC model where things like data and data recipes can be brought together, and perhaps ESIP testbed can provide a way forward in that. And there's other things like the HDFOSU that could also be explored. So, if you want to learn more, contact me or one of the other organizers. How we're going to this is all going to evolve is still TBD. Of course, there were various commonalities with the previous talks that Douglas presented in the AI arena. Certainly, there's opportunity to collaborate there, or through the cloud computing and the machine learning clusters are another natural avenues for future collaboration on this topic. So I think I'll stop right there.
Thank you, Ed. We will move now to someone for whom it's not even 7 a.m. in the morning yet. We welcome Leslie Wyborn to tell us about determining the current and future Earth science data frontiers.
Thanks, Megan. I'd just like to say that this was a one-off session that we ran, and it's probably unusual, and it's actually run by ESIP board members. And how it came about is that we were discussing the strategic plan with Susan on theme 5, which is leading innovation at the Earth Science Data Frontiers. And the key question then becomes, how do we determine the current and future Earth Science frontiers, and do we know if ESIP is at them? And we had a few presentations. And so first of all, we looked to the past, and ESIP has a long history, and Erin Robinson kindly gave us some of her time to actually document how ESIP has interacted with some of these organisations in the past. It is here. We looked at tools for tracking the changing focus of an organisation, and Siri Joda gave us this brilliant analysis of how SE has evolved in EGU from 2011 to 2018. And you can start to see what they're focusing on. And then if you know there's a hot topic, see if it's starting to appear in EGU. And I thought this would be brilliant to do in ESIP and also AGU. George Percival from OGC gave us insights into how they do it. I think the key takeaway was that through collaboration, we can help determine both the frontiers of innovation, and everyone said, and of adoption. And the session consensus, and many people put it in chat and in the notes, was they feel ESIP is at the frontiers. So if you want to learn more, all the resources, tools for tracking are all in the session document. If you also, I run the ESIP RDA with Shelley and Danny and a couple of others. And that is a place where if you've got something that is of interest and you're not sure whether it's, a global issue, then you can test it there. Carl and Kathy also are the ESIP reps on Geo. And my final message is this was a one-off. We almost called it Susan's session. And I don't think we'll be running it again. It was more to help the board understand what leading innovation at Earth Science Data Frontiers meant. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Next, we will hear from Danny Kincaid, who's going to tell us about calling all research data publication stakeholders.
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, this session was sort of in response to an emerging challenge between the research data publication stakeholders, primarily between repositories and publishers, journals. And my co-chairs for this session were Leslie, who just spoke, and Shelley Stahl. And really, the goals were to kind of promote a common understanding of what the publication workflow looks like for long-tail research data. That's starting from the data originator and ending up at the scholarly publication journal reviewer. There are a lot of challenges associated that have been emerging as the importance of data publication kind of bubbles up to the surface here. We wanted to collect some sample use cases of what workflows look like from repositories, and most specifically document the stakeholder challenges and needs at the touch points of where these stakeholders come in contact with each other in this workflow. We acknowledge that some of this work has been done through the RDA already, but it's at a very high level, and we really wanted to get into the weeds and look at some of the nitty-gritty problems associated with the relationships between repositories and publishers. So we had a few talks sort of setting the stage, myself documenting some problems with that BigODemo, challenges BigODemo is having. Jake Carlson, the director of the Deep Blue repository and research data services at the University of Michigan Library, and Shelley Stahl communicated to folks wearing her sort of AGU publisher hat. We then broke out into breakout groups and let people really annotate and dig into a draft workflow model that you see in that image on the right here. So there's a lot of interest in this topic. Some of the takeaways were that the DMP is really, really important here in maybe alleviating future problems, getting all of these workflows right. Timing of all these activities among the stakeholders is really important. There currently is no communication across all of these stakeholders, so we really need to increase and pay better attention to that. There was enough interest that we're actually planning a workshop prior to the coming RDA in April plenary. I don't even know what number it is anymore, maybe 17, 18. But if you, in the meantime, if you want to know more, you can contact me, or better yet, join the Esip and RDA Earth and Space and Environmental Sciences interest group, where the link is in the slide. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Danny. Next up, Sophie Howe will be telling us about the session held at the meeting about the Data Management Training Clearinghouse.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, everybody. I'm Sophie Howe. I am presenting this session on behalf of the Data Management Training Clearinghouse team, the DMTC team, which includes Nancy Hober-Heinrich, Carl Benedict, Mona Wang, and myself. So during the session, we engage our community members in trying out the new search page design using user study technique. And we actually had to modify the technique a little bit because we typically would like to speak to people one-on-one, but obviously during the session we couldn't do that. So we had two different modified versions. Mona and Carl held the session in the main room, and Nancy and I broke into a separate room to talk to additional members, more as a group, but also try to get as much as possible of one-on-one feedback. And as a result of this session, we have these three takeaways. First, we learned that the attendees really enjoy providing feedback to us. And this is definitely a pleasant surprise. We obviously love for people to be able to give us feedback. And for people to enjoy that process was really encouraging. And because people were so proactive and were so positive with giving feedback and providing thoughts on their experiences, we were able to take the feedback right away and implement the suggestions, and our user interface developer thought that was a really helpful process for her as well. And finally, we were really encouraged to know that many of our attendees really enjoy seeing our progress. The DMTC has been in existence for almost 6+ years, and many of these attendees were with us along the way. So it was always encouraging to know that they like seeing what we have done and will be part of the process going forward. And if you have any additional feedback that you would like to provide to us, please contact Carl and Nancy at clearinghouse.ed@esifed.org. Thanks very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sophie. Next, we pass it to Doug Schuster to tell us about preserving and replicating computational model data.
Thanks, Megan, and happy Friday and Saturday to everybody. So really the motivation for this breakout session was to introduce an EarthCube Research Coordination Network project that I'm a co-I on, along with Matt Mcgranigan and Dr. Gretchen Mullendor. And the project's looking into the problem, what about model data, determining best practices for preservation and replicability. Really the motivation for that project is that researchers face challenges in meeting open access requirements by publishers and funders when they're dealing with simulation experiments that can be very large in volume. In the past, publishers have asked researchers or authors to provide all of the data related to a publication and put that data in a repository. Well, that can be prohibitive in this case. So our project's working on developing a rubric to guide researchers on what needs to be preserved for model outputs to support replicability. For our breakout session, we had 4 panelists. They included Matt Mcgranigan, who provided a project overview, Gary Strand, who provided a climate data management use case overview, Peter Fox, who provided an editor perspective on expectations for model data preservation and sharing, and finally, Mark Parsons, who went over community expectations for data and software citations, and that was followed by open discussion. A few of the takeaways that came out of this breakout session, as well as our project in general, is that sharing software would generally be preferred to sharing large model outputs. But there are challenges, including IP concerns and cultural issues, which might be addressed by changing the metrics that are used in institutional rewards. Also, model data tends to lose value over time, so there needs to be a process to determine when data can be deassessed from repositories. And finally, transparency is the goal for data and software citation amongst journals. So we're going to take some of these takeaways, have further workshops for our project. And if you're interested in reviewing the rubric that we have at this point or participating in further future workshops, please go to the project website and contact me if you'd like to be added to our project mailing list. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Next, we'll be hearing about Jupyter notebooks and harnessing their full potential from Ahmed Elish.
Thank you, Megan. Hello, everyone, and I'm Ahmed Elish. On behalf of my co-conveners, I'd like to first thank everyone at Esip for a great planning and execution of the meeting. Personally, it was my first participation at Esip, and it's been a very rewarding experience. The goal of our session was to introduce Jupyter and some of its applications like notebooks, Hub, etc., to an audience of, we expect, varying levels of different research interests and levels of expertise. Jupyter is a computational platform for data science. And we had a great discussion, and some of our takeaways are, first, that there is a need to match resources with specific community or research needs, especially given that Jupyter is an open source project with many different components, and its development is community driven. So there's really not the one place to go to for information on how to start using it and its different extensions. On the flip side, Jupyter as a project does offer, Jupyter and its components and their many extensions offers a lot of opportunities to get the gears moving, so to speak, in research and educational projects, especially those that are data intensive with data intensive activities. We had a very interesting use case show up that is using Jupyter notebooks specifically as a representation for a research paper and actually having it published as is, or the idea of adopting these types of representations of code and data and analysis and results all within the same document, and having that available, for example, for publishing. And we were lucky enough to have one of the co-founders of Project Jupyter, and I personally, as a active user of the platform, learned a couple of new things. So it's an active, evolving project, and it has a lot to offer to everyone at different levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed, for bringing this session to Esip, and thank you to your co-organizers as well. We hope this won't be the only time you organize a session at the Esip meeting. Moving on now, we will be speaking with David Maroney, who will tell us about improving representation of data quality information.
Thank you, Megan, and good afternoon. So I'm presenting this session debrief on behalf of the Information Quality Cluster. And this is actually an extension, this session was an extension from the summer meeting on data quality information, coming at it from the perspective of the FAIR data principles. And so this follow-on session is an extension of that, and we kind of included some of our ongoing work that we're doing in parallel. So I gave a debrief in this session on the data uncertainty white paper, follow-on work, which includes looking at additional perspectives that we didn't cover in our foundational paper, including suborbital, in situ, data assimilation and modeling. And then Bob Downs presented some of our work that we've been doing in parallel as well on international collaboration on data quality. So this includes a recently submitted paper to the Frontier Special Issue on citizen science data on the topic of citizen science data quality. And also it includes a lightning talk submission to an upcoming conference on international data curation. It's the International Data Digital Curation Conference, known as IDCC 21. And so the topic of that is to foster sharing and use of open earth science data quality information. And lastly, we're also contributing to the Group on Earth Observations, also known as GEO, as part of their data working group. And there's a subgroup in particular that we're contributing to called Data Management Principles and Data Sharing Principles. And lastly, Peng presented the FAIR Data Quality Information Guidelines. And this is really the thrust of the purpose behind this session. So this chart that you see here, looking at the 4 different data quality dimensions, and then within those we have these various data set lifecycle stages. So the idea here is that we have this appendix to a paper that we're preparing. It's now in the 4th stage of being drafted, and we had about 25 minutes or so to discuss in breakouts the concepts of these data quality dimensions as well as the lifecycle stages. And what is going to happen next is this will be submitted as part of the Open Science Framework in the next several months. But in this breakout, we were able to obtain some feedback, and some of the key takeaways is that representing dataset quality information is critical for enabling diverse data uses. We also need to assess dataset quality information throughout dataset lifecycle stages. And also there's this these variety of quality feedback loops that occur among the lifecycle stages, which take you back at various stages. Here's the wiki page if you want to learn more. We will be publishing this not just in the Open Science Framework, but also will be linked to it through our IQC FAIR Data Quality Information wiki page. We have monthly teleconferences. Our next one is going to be next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, so feel free to join us. Thank you.
Thanks, David. It's exciting to see all the presenters have so much that they'd like to share. It's really quite a task that we give you to fit this into 2-minute report outs, but thank you for being here. And we have, last but not least, Gary Berg-Cross, who will be telling us about advances in semantic harmonization. And Gary's not actually last. We're going to go into some highlights from a couple of other perspectives after, but welcome, Gary.
Thank you, Megan, for squeezing us in, and happy not to be last, but I'm the co-chair of the Semantic Harmonization Cluster along with Ruth Stewart. And this was a session organized by us to talk about our progress, and we were very encouraged. As people may know, we've been working in the cryosphere and glacial type of items for a number of years, and we are beginning to move forward to some broader topics and other domains. We had 6 speakers, and I'm going to summarize a small number of points from 4 of the speakers. First, starting with Ruth Stewart, because the work starts there. Our harmonization started from her work and funded by the Global Cryosphere Watch group to harmonize a whole range of cryosphere glossary terms. We found out about that and used that to base some updates to Envo and also Suite based on that work. So we've had essentially monthly meetings looking at her harmonization work and moving it into Envo along with axiomizations. Ruth's presentation went through some of the difficulties of harmonizing diverse things. Following that, we had Pierre Buttigieg talking about examples of this work and how it can now be used to bridge to other domains such as in ocean science, marine, and soil. The diagram on the right shows just an example of some of the work visualizing permafrost in terms of its composition, what its supertype is, how it's formed, and also links to vocabularies and other efforts like Suite. Finally, we had some presentations on guiding principles now we can use, as well as some templating tools that help us go from a spreadsheet of terms into an ontology in Protege. If you want to learn more, we have a mailing list that is shown down here. And that's it.
Thanks, Gary. So next up, we are going to hear from 4 of Esip's community fellows. These folks started as community fellows with Esip in December, so they're relatively new, and this was their first Esip meeting in most cases, and their perspectives are very important. So first up, I believe we will be hearing from Marian McKenzie, who will tell us about her cluster session, Community Data Cluster Ideation and Gap Analysis.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Megan. So I'm Marian. I'm the 2021 Esip Fellow for the Community Data Cluster. And during our winter session, the Community Data Cluster expanded upon the work conducted at the summer 2020 session, where the group developed a landscape analysis related to the water crisis in Flint, Michigan. In last month's session, we ideated around themes related to data accessibility and equity in Flint. These specific themes included public data curation related to the Freedom of Information Act, map integration, how to gain and maintain community buy-in, and how we may best utilize Esip and its resources. One product of these conversations was the idea of focusing and defining our audience more specifically so we can best support them while utilizing third-party experts to garner trust among community members. And lastly, the session brought participants to consider the scope of this project and define goals for our next steps. So some of the ideas that were discussed include a curate-a-thon of existing Flint data or developing a framework of best practices for community data work. And the Community Data Cluster meets on the second Wednesday of every month at 4 p.m. Eastern, and we'd love to have you if you're interested or just want to sit in to listen. And feel free to join our Slack channel, our mailing list, or reach out to either of the chairs, Steve Diggs or Andrea Tomer, or myself, and my email is on the slide. Thank you.
Thanks, Marian. Next up will be Ned Mulder, the fellow for the Public-Private Partnerships Cluster, to tell us about his highlights.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. Hey, everyone. Yeah, like Megan mentioned, this is my first Esip meeting as an Esip fellow, and so these are just some of the takeaways that I had from the meeting as a whole. So firstly, I realized there's just this huge amount of breadth and depth of experience and expertise at Esip. Every session that I was part of, I felt like there was just a huge variety of people who knew a lot about that subject, or if not that subject, another subject that's relevant to that subject. And there's just a lot of sort of overlap and really great conversations and work being done in every single session I was in. The second takeaway is that I really felt like the earth science community is thinking and planning actively for the future of earth science and data management. I was in the session that Leslie highlighted earlier about the future frontiers of earth science and earth science data. And it instilled confidence that the future of earth and environmental science is bright. And then lastly, earth science is really a social practice. Even though the focus of earth science is really, the earth, it's largely on like non-human environments, it still is very social and built around these sort of collaborative processes that happen at Esip and elsewhere. So those were just some of the three of the things that I took away from this meeting. My info's down there. I'm part of the P3 cluster, like Megan mentioned. And yeah, that's a lot. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for helping us to see the meeting through your eyes. So next we'll pass it to Christine Gregg, the fellow for the Community Resilience Cluster, for her highlights.
Thanks, Megan. So like Megan mentioned, hi everyone, I'm Christine Gregg and I'm the Community Fellow for the Community Resilience Cluster. So this is my first Esip meeting, and I would just like to share a few takeaways for folks that are either new to Esip or are maybe interested in exploring a new cluster. So as you've likely noticed throughout this webinar, the winter meeting has something for just about everyone, from end user focused topics to the nuts and bolts of earth science data processes and implementation. So despite the breadth of topics, there were a few common threads that united the sessions and their contributions. First off, Esip is a very welcoming community of earth science and data champions with a collective wealth of knowledge to share. Second, there's a huge focus on finding points where clusters and specialties overlap to spur ideas for future collaboration. I also felt like there were plenty of ways to meaningfully contribute to a cluster, even if its focus is new to you. And last but not least, Esip contributors are very passionate about their work, and they're eager to bring new viewpoints and knowledge into the fold. So I hope you'll take some time to view a new winter meeting session or participate in a new cluster telecon. I know Community Resilience would be very happy to have you join us. Thanks.
Thank you, Christine. I really like that charge. Everyone go view something that you haven't seen yet. Try something new. There's so much to get involved in Esip. So next we will pass it to Sarah Lafia, who will, the fellow for the Discovery Cluster, and she will be telling us about the research showcase.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Megan. I'm Sarah Lafia, and I am the Community Fellow for the Discovery Cluster. So in addition to having a really stimulating breakout session with the Discovery Cluster, where we identified some great shared themes, we're continuing to do that. I also really enjoyed participating in the online research showcase. I'm a new postdoc, and so this was a really awesome opportunity for me to get some early feedback on my project. And it was also exciting to find common threads with other posters that also dealt with topics related to data curation and data stewardship. So I found this to be a really exciting opportunity to get that early feedback and make good connections. And I just have to say too that the meeting on whole, like with the online platform experience, was really great. I've joined a couple of other poster sessions during the past year, and this was by far the best experience I've had with getting meaningful feedback on my research. So the next steps I'm looking forward to for the year are building on this and finding more opportunities to connect my research interests in data curation and data discovery with a bunch of different clusters. So I'm really excited to continue this work, and also the work with the data curation and data discovery clusters. And if you want to get in touch, my email's there. Please also join our discovery sessions if you're able. And I encourage you to go check out the posters on Figshare as well. I found the past year's collections also really exciting and valuable resources. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to all of the community fellows who reported out. Thank you also to all of our breakout session presenters. Before we leave today, I did want to pass it to Susan Shingledecker to tell us about the state of Esip and to close out the rest of the webinar.
Thank you, Megan. Wow, I feel like I have been on a whirlwind tour. So thank you to everyone who has provided highlights thus far, for having the passion to convey to the whole audience here what they might have missed if they missed your session during the winter meeting. And like the last fellow said, if something piqued your interest, there are recordings, there are materials, there are further conversations on all of those. So I had the pleasure of presenting the state of Esip to the group, and in doing so, we celebrated the 18 new partners we saw in the last year that joined Esip. We shared the strategic themes that will guide us forward for the next 5 years. We reviewed the accomplishments, and we talked about where we're heading in the areas of collaboration areas, data help desk, support to our sponsors and partners in some of the outside workshops that Esip does. We talked about the pivot that we did in 2020 to virtual meetings, the work that we saw in that, the constant changes that we made to try and deliver the best experiences for all of you. And we talked about the Esip Lab and where they're headed. We welcomed our new board leadership, which I am really excited to already begin working with. We are actually close to rounding out our committees for the year. Normally we would have caucused for those groups at the meeting, but we have done that kind of virtually, and we are pretty close. If any of you are type 1 members and interested in engaging more, I still need a couple type 1 members to raise their hands. I will say those type 2s, we had more than one person interested in every committee, so that was fantastic, and I love to see the excitement and the willingness of people to step forward and contribute. I also reviewed our financials with everyone, and we are in a really strong and stable position. We have multi-year agreements with our 3 core federal sponsors, and we'll be looking at ways to diversify our funding as we look forward as well. We had federal sponsor updates from Tony Lavoie from NOAA, from Sky Bristol from USGS, and from Katie Baines from NASA, and it was really great to get their perspective on a lot of the things that we are all doing and their priorities within their agencies. Our beautiful 2020 annual report is now up on Figshare. You can see a picture of it here. It is 46 beautiful pages of all the things we accomplished as a community in 2020. So I encourage you to check that out. And it was my absolute privilege to be able to award 4 awards to really key members of our community. And I really hope you will join me in celebrating and thanking Rama, who was the recipient of the Martha Maiden Lifetime Achievement Award, Rebecca, who was the President's Award recipient, Jensen, who was the Catalyst Award recipient, and JPL, who was awarded Esips Partner of the Year. And I couldn't help but think last night as I watched that rover touchdown that, man, JPL's having a heck of a year. A rover on Mars and Esip Partner of the Year, I mean, that's pretty great. So next slide, please. I do want to thank our meeting sponsors. I want to thank SAIC, who is a new sponsor with us, and they will actually also be sponsoring our innovation webinar series that will continue forward throughout the year, and really grateful for Tim Ortiz, his participation, and SAIC's support. Also want to thank AGU, who was the sponsor of our research showcase, Element 84, who was one of our social sponsors and designed the t-shirt that many of you purchased. Thank you very much. And also recognize our in-kind sponsors, AWS and ThinkShare. Next slide. So I will just leave you with the charge. It's always my aim to let you get 5 minutes back in your day. But you know, as we leave the winter meeting, as we head into the year, to find the ways to join us, find the ways to discover the people and the tools that can help enable your work, find the ways to innovate with us, collaborate with us, and grow your network. If you are not yet involved in a collaboration area, reach out to the Esip staff. We would love to help connect you with the leadership in those areas. I actually just did a focus group yesterday with some of the 12 Black and Latino early career professionals that we invited into the winter meeting. And you know, I put that charge out to them as well. We want to connect you to one of our collaboration areas, and we are happy to help make those introductions for you. Would love to see that happen. And next slide. Last, just thank you. Thank you for being here. Esip is all about the people, and we are so grateful to have you here. And if you are not on our Monday update email address, please, here is the link to subscribe to that. And that is the easiest way to get a regular update on all things that are going on with Esip. And with that, I'm happy to give you back a couple minutes into your day. But know that the Esip staff is always here to help support you, and we always welcome your feedback.
Thank you, everyone.